what I thought were big advantages were actually handicaps, and what I thought were the biggest challenges in my life actually turned out to be something I'm grateful for, because it led to something that I'd never imagined. And there is a very beautiful philosophy that I read about by this Roman philosopher who was imprisoned for treason. He says, Lady Fortune, she is capricious. Sometimes she lifts you up and sometimes she casts you down. So in today's episode, I wanted to talk about how everything that we encounter in life is both a boon and a curse. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Enter Samatvam. If you're new here, at Enter Samatvam, we discuss how to live your best life. And in the Real Talk series, it's a mostly unscripted series where I'm generally talking without a script that I've written beforehand, but I might have a few talking points to give me direction. Now, this philosophy is something that I've noticed in my own life. And so today I wanted to spend more time on this idea because it has personally really helped me to shift my perspective and change certain narratives I had subconsciously about the way I viewed challenges in life or the way I viewed even successes in life. And so I thought, why not spend time elaborating on this idea so it might also help give you some value in your own life. What I've noticed is that just like we have energy cycles throughout the day, wherein maybe in the morning you feel energetic, but as you expend your energy, you start feeling tired by the end of the day, and naturally you seek rest and then go to sleep in the night. And maybe if you're a night creature, you probably follow an opposite schedule. Similar to how natural and expected this cycle of energy movement is, that's how happiness and sadness also works. And by happiness and sadness, you can also see it as the ups and downs in life. So every time there is a high phase, there is also a low phase that might come up soon. And we think that as soon as we get into a low phase, we think that it's going to last forever, and we tend to suffer and we feel really bad about those low phases. We compare and we'll see others who are probably in a high phase right now, not realizing that everybody is just going through their own cycles of ups and downs themselves. And if we become used to this idea, then it's actually easier somehow to deal with the low phases because you know that it's temporary. If you think about it from the perspective of a graph, generally you're going through like crests and troughs, and when you are in a crest or a high phase, if you only become attached to the high phase and you feel like, oh wow, this is so amazing, I just want to be here my entire life. What happens is when you are in a high, if you remain over there, it just becomes stagnant and it becomes like a plateau, right? And naturally when you are in a plateau and you are stagnated like that, automatically you start feeling bored and you start feeling the need for a change, which brings you back to the low phase. So there is no escaping the low phase, and you realize that the low phase is something that is constant. It is a natural cycle in life that you cannot escape. And so if there is no escaping it, then you realize that the trough was supposed to lead you back to a high again, and that's why it exists, and that's part of the dynamic nature of life. Then you might as well figure out ways to enjoy it and deal with it better. Story that reflects this point is the story of Bhishma from Mahabharata. Bhishma was given the boon of immortality or self-willed death. He could choose whenever he wanted to die. But if you're familiar with the story of Mahabharata, then you'll know that the same boon that was given to him eventually became a source of suffering for him, because he had to watch his kinsmen fight each other to battle, and so he had to watch the destruction of his own dynasty while he was alive, and he couldn't choose death before that because he had given a vow to support one side of the battle, and there was nothing he could do. He had to go through quite a painful ordeal, and what anybody else from the outside would think of as a great advantage, having immortality, turned out to be a big curse for him. The same thing that gave you happiness could at some point become a source of suffering for you. And if you have read the book Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, he mentions this in his book where he talks about viewing happiness and sadness as two sides of the same coin. And I think it's something that is also talked about in various different philosophies like Buddhism and certain Stoic philosophy as well, where there is this idea that when you experience happy moments, they are soon followed by sad moments. So happiness brings with it all the sad counterparts. Even if you don't experience it at the same time, it eventually follows. Now, if you have been part of the tech world, you might have heard of the layoffs that have been happening. And generally with AI, I think there are several job roles that have become redundant. And if someone goes through a situation like a layoff, then the immediate conclusion that comes to the mind is normally thoughts of panic or thoughts of stress where you're unsure where you're headed and there's a real threat to your income source, and it's naturally a cause of concern. But when you're going through a situation like that, what we don't think of is the hidden opportunity in that situation, and how even though you went through a job loss that was completely out of your control, maybe there is another angle that you can take wherein you see that maybe you're supposed to be heading in a different direction entirely. So sometimes life makes you go through a certain situation to reveal other opportunities of growth that you had not thought of before. And when we are going through situations like this, it is not evident immediately. But when you spend time thinking about this situation from this angle of, everything being both a positive and negative, that's when you're able to think about the situation more creatively and able to come up with ideas that you couldn't have otherwise. And there is a very beautiful philosophy that I read about by this Roman philosopher who was imprisoned for treason in the 6th century, and I believe he was wrongly imprisoned. And while he was in the prison, he wrote a book called The Consolations of Philosophy, which is basically his attempt at understanding the misfortune that he is going through. And as he debates and reflects on his own condition and generally the human state of affairs, he realizes that what he is going through is not really suffering, and what he is going through is not really misfortune. And there's one line that he uses which is very interesting, which he says, "Lady Fortune, she is capricious. Sometimes she lifts you up and sometimes she casts you down," which means that you don't know when she'll change her mind. Sometimes she'll give you luck, happiness, all the things you want, everything that your mind desires. But the same thing that's been given to you can also be taken away whenever she wants, completely out of your control. He recognizes that life is like a wheel of fortune. So what Boethius says is that the wheel can turn and can make kings into beggars and beggars into kings. And what Boethius realizes is that the wise thing to do is to not cling to this wheel at all, because the wheel keeps spinning. Life will always have ups and downs, but if you anchor yourself in something that remains unchanged, so neither the highs nor the lows, but rather to root yourself in something that's inside of you that remains unchanged. It could be your inner values, the wisdom, this wisdom that you are getting from this entire experience, or it could be the capacity to be at peace and to be at calm, that choice. In that case, you will discover where real freedom is. And generally that anchor is what we also talk about in self-awareness, which is this idea that you're not your thoughts, but you're just a witness of those thoughts. And so you make that as your anchor. And what you think is you when you're suffering is not really you, but just the thoughts of suffering that you keep paying attention to and you mistakenly identify as yourself. It's just like a movie playing in front of you. When you watch a good movie which moves your heart. You can cry with it, but at the end of the day, it is just a movie. And you realize that it'll be over and there will be a new movie soon. And the thing to learn from this concept is to understand that detachment actually serves us the best. And by detachment, it is not being indifferent. It is more of being detached from your thoughts or understanding that even if I'm having a good time right now, it's not going to last forever. Or even if I'm suffering right now, it's not going to last forever. And if you have that one understanding lodged inside, then the seeming ups and downs become much more easier to deal with. And this wheel of fortune, it stops mattering. And you tend to feel more gratified by life's experiences, and contrary to what you might think, you actually end up experiencing life more deeply, because now you're truly being in a state of play and you're truly able to not be swayed into each current of life. And that brings about a completely different dimension of experiencing life, one that you had never thought of before. And that's why it's relevant for each and every person to reflect on this in their own life. I hope that this topic was interesting for you and that it left you with something to think about and something to ponder on. If you have any other examples related to this topic or any other thoughts that you would like to share it down in the comments below. And that's it for today, and I'll see you guys in the next video.